So, in the Chatterbox set of videos, the term artificial fighter was thrown around a lot. Let's talk about that. While we're at it, let's talk about some important artificial fighter characters who I don't think would be able to fit into shorts, nor would really belong in their own long-form video. Starting off, what exactly is an artificial fighter? In terms of population, when 1 euro was first made, it was practically empty except for the jesters. With all these people supposedly coming in to fill the world, Sparrow had a feeling that it would be creepy at first for the fighters to come into an empty plane. So, they made artificial fighters. Artificial fighters come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Some able to scale buildings, while others not even able to scale the jesters. Artificial fighters aren't meant to just fill the world of 1 euro. Most of them, actually, do jobs that the jesters do not want the fighters to do, such as transportation or medical care. Speaking of transportation, let's talk about probably the most popular artificial fighter, Slinky. We learned about Slinky through the Sparrow video, though I didn't really go in depth, did I? All I really covered was explaining their relationship with Sparrow, which is father and son, as Sparrow created all the artificial fighters. Slinky is a sentient monorail system. Because of how big 1 euro is, being a similar size to Chicago, fighters need a quick way to get from point A to point B. Slinky solves the issue. After all, most fighters did not retain their modes of transportation when they were taken to 1 euro, unless they were on their person when they were taken. Like with splits and roller skates. Slinky was based on a worm on a string. To me, they resemble more of a ferret than anything, though their mannerisms are more similar to a cat. They mostly meow instead of using plain English. They have the capability, but it's just straining on their vocal cords, so they choose not to. They're highly flexible and have strong agility. They have very fluffy fur, and it's very similar to the texture of cat's fur. And, like cats, they are very impulsive. Slinky's route is very interesting, as it is a series of hamster tubes laid out and coiled around 1 euro so fighters can get to their designated areas. This is for the fighter's safety and Slinky's. Since Slinky is very literally the size of a monorail, they could crush fighters. The series of tubes prevent that, as they only open at stations. And fighters sure as hell know not to go into the tubes if they know what's good for them. Really, Slinky doesn't have that much going on, but they are very present in the story, since they live with Stevie and all. Slinky and Stevie have a very cute dynamic, since Stevie was the first fighter and all, and Slinky was one of the first artificial fighters. They got paired up. They both live in a parking garage of sorts, mostly to accommodate for Slinky's size. Slinky mostly resides there on their breaks, which are very few and far between because of how erratic their transportation schedule is. Oh, and something to note, before I wrap up Slinky's section, Slinky has a very distinct pattern on their fur. That pattern is also evident on Sparrow's hair. This is a mutation that can happen on some artificial fighters. Think of it like a watermark Sparrow has. Well, that's it for Slinky. Slinky was actually one of the more complex artificial fighters out of the first batch. Well, along with Bubba. But let's talk about the more simpler artificial fighters from the first generation. The audience. These guys are the total definition of NPC. They have nothing going on up there. How can I describe them? Okay, so we all know what a Nintendo Wii is, right? The Nintendo Wii had this cool little game on it called Wii Sports. During a lot of the minigames, there were these little audience me's who would watch people play. That's these guys. Except they don't all get to look different. They all look the same. They all retain the appearance of these blue, semi-humanoid blobs. Though sometimes during the fight, they get costumes. When they're watching the arena, sometimes they will rep the fighters fighting. So, for example, let's say O'Brien is fighting. What's something about O'Brien's design that sticks out? His little heart beneath his chest plate. Since that is a part of his design that sticks out, the little audience members will have a little heart on them when he is fighting. Sometimes they'll even hold up signs repping the fighter that they're cheering for. Another comparison to what these guys are those candy NPCs from the Candy Rush... is it called Candy Rush? I don't know. The, candy game from Wreck-It Ralph, if you know what I'm talking about. I'll probably shove some footage on screen of what those guys look like. That's another really good representation of what the audience is as a concept. And really, by the looks of it, that's it for them. Some artificial fighters are obvious, like Slinky and the audience. But some pass as fighters more than others. And those ones actually compete in the fights as well. Really, there's no way to tell if an artificial fighter is artificial or not, except for 2 ways. Number 1, they are hollow on the inside. That kind of makes Slinky's situation a bit complicated since they are a monorail system. The kicker with them being, they are hollow. They have no organs. All of the seats, metal flooring, and walls on the inside of them, those were all installed after they were born. So Slinky, without all the bells and whistles in them, they're hollow. No bones, no nothing. Just skin and fur. Another way to spot an artificial fighter would be their blood color. Artificial fighters bleed the same blood the jesters bleed, which would be ichor, which is black. Not one non-native fighter to 1 euro bleeds black. This is only a characteristic to beings native to 1 euro. I don't really know how to lay out the generations in this video, but Generation 1 is defined as the first set of artificial fighters made by Sparrow, whom were made to fill jobs and to start the population of 1 euro. Generation 1 and 2 are separated by the incident. Generation 2 also differs from Generation 1 because they were made to fight into the Ophelion. Generation 1 fighters could also fight, but it's only Bubba who has interest in doing it, since he wants to blend in with the chatterboxes. Meaning, it was a Generation 2 fighter who ripped Velocity's leg off. Because Sparrow is, well, yeah. When they were making the artificial fighters of Gen 2, they didn't really turn out normal, per se. They for sure had the charm of Gen 1, but it is very noticeable that they have no soul. Though normal fighters chalk it up to them just coming from strange worlds. Generation 2 was proposed by Trix when they were bored around the 100th or so reset. That leaves the last generation, Generation 3. Generation 3 is very different from the first 2. They were not made to service 1 euro, they were made to silence it. If you watched the Chatterbox set of videos, or Heather's short, you'd be kind of familiar with this generation. This generation began when Trix found out about the host of Sparrow. Out of complete paranoia to what Sparrow might have told this group of fighters, Trix called Bubba for their immediate execution. Bubba, the Chatterbox, and ex-Trash Compactor being the one to carry out these hits. The reason why Trix chose Bubba to do this was for many reasons. Bubba, for instance, is no stranger to cleaning up undesirable waste. And because Bubba was made to clean up trash, Bubba has no attachment towards these fighters, as they were not made to have any attachment towards any fighters. Again, like I said before, making this easy. So, Bubba did their thing. That thing being killing each host once they are found alone. As when they are 100% alone, there are no witnesses to the absolute massacre that will happen to them. This leads to the actual creation of a 3rd generation artificial fighter. Sparrow, in their state, is shown a picture of the fighter who died, and is set to recreate that fighter in Trix's vision. Trix has very different views for every fighter that is remade. Let's name off some examples, since it really is different depending on each fighter. Starting with, once again, the hosts. Since Trix didn't really know what Sparrow told them, they had to be remade almost completely the same as they were before, except with Sparrow omitted from their memories. Then with Heather was also made to almost be the exact same. The only difference being she has no desire to leave Trix anymore. She is now their most faithful worker, next to Bubbles, of course. Then there's Julia and Winston. Since Winston didn't pose much of an issue before Julia started speaking up, Winston was kept almost the exact same, except the memories of before he became clean, and before Julia started talking to him seriously, were both wiped from his mind. Julia is actually a more extreme case of a Gen 3 artificial fighter. Since she was the one to get Winston to turn, she completely lost the ability to talk when she was remade, just to be really sure that she wouldn't influence anyone else. These remade versions of the fighters are controlled by Trix, because those artificial fighters see Trix as a secondary creator since Sparrow is out of commission. To kind of sum it up, Bubba from Gen 1 eliminates the original fighters that Gen 3 artificial fighters were made in the image of. Sparrow is tasked to remake the fighters with whatever was, quote, wrong with them removed. That would be Gen 3. And again, what's horrifying about this generation is that they are almost incomparable to the original fighter. Except for if you cut them open and see they are hollow, or make them bleed to see if they bleed black. With that being said, I hope you liked the explanation of the artificial fighters. It's a really fun concept I have in my world, and I think it makes 1 Euro a lot more interesting, and maybe a little more dystopian. Thank you for watching, bye!